Hi there. This is going to be a really quick demo of how you can use arrays and empty objects to set those arrays to make kind of a simple low poly flower like this. So let's jump into it. Whoops. Okay, so we'll start with a default scene. In fact, let's just make a new file. There we go. We got the default cube, and we can just get right to work using this cube. So this technique is going to use a combination of arrays, subdivide modifier, and proportional editing. So let's just jump right into what is proportional editing. So right now we've got this cube here. I'm going to subdivide it so it has a little more geometry to look at for this. And you'll see that if I grab a point and move it around, it just moves that point. So one of the techniques we're going to use to make the petals and flower, petals and leaves of this flower is proportional editing. You can do that by clicking this button up here, or you can just press the letter O. And with proportional editing, you can see that when I stretch this corner, if I expand this circle, it kind of stretches all the points that we can see through the circle. So it proportionally adjusts the editing. And the way I can open and close this circle is just by scrolling up and down on the mouse or sliding up and down with 2 fingers on a trackpad on a Mac. And this can be useful for a variety of different things. For instance, I'm going to scale this by pressing S for scale. I'm going to press Z to scale it on the Z axis in edit mode. So now, oops, I'm in object mode, but we'll just apply the scale. So in edit mode, so we have this tall cube. And now I will make a loop cut, Command R, Control R, scroll on the mouse to make a bunch of cuts. Let me do that once more. So I click once, and then to center it, I just right click, that drops it right in the middle, or tap on the trackpad with 2 fingers on a Mac. And now you can see with proportional editing off, I can rotate the top of this cube on the Z-axis. But if I turn it on, you can see I can get this great twist effect and kind of twist this whole thing up. So proportional editing can do a lot of great things. We're just going to take our basic cube and we're going to turn this into a flower petal. So we can make a petal out of a cube or a plane very easily. I'm going to go into my modifiers, this little icon that looks like a wrench, and I'm going to add a subdivision surface modifier. I'm going to set that to, actually just going to set it to 1 to start, because we're going to kind of keep this leaf looking really low poly to start with. So I'm going to hit S for scale, Z for Z axis. This is in edit mode, and squash that cube down. Now I'll hit S and Y, stretch it out, and you can see we're starting to get more of a leafy shape already. I can grab just this back face, or just click on it, and then I'm going to select this face. So I'll press S for scale, X for X axis, and I can bring that end in. And then maybe if I want it to look a little more leafish, I can press Command R for loop cut, make a cut right down the middle. Select that edge, so you can switch between 1 for point selection, 2 for edge selection, 3 for face selection. So in 2, select the edge and hit G and grab Y. And right now it's playing the whole thing because of proportional editing. I'm going to just scroll that circle way down. You can see I can pull this out into kind of, I think, a nice flower petally shape. I might even grab just these 2 edges here. Whoops. And press S to scale, X for X axis to bring those out a little bit. You can see this is looking pretty good. And then maybe I'll select these faces and just trying to decide if I want to do anything more to this. Maybe I'll hit E to extrude on those faces. kind of give it more like a lump in the back. I'll press Option Z for X-ray mode and select all these points here and point select, and press S for scale, Z for Z-axis, and squash that down even more. And I think we've got a really good basic flower going on here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this from the top. Proportional editing is off. I'm going to hit A for select all, or sorry, I'm going to select the petal, tab, be in edit mode, A to select all, G to grab, Y for the Y-axis. I'm going to move this so the back of it sits right on that line. And if you want to make it exact, which you don't actually need to for this, but if you want to make it exact, the way you would do that is here in the snap settings, we can turn on absolute grid snap. And then we can press G for grab, but hold down the control key. And you can see it really snaps exactly to points on the grid. So let's see. I guess in that case, a different part of it is snapping. So I'm just going to do it manually. So line that up right there. There's a way to make the snapping a little more precise, but I think it's better to just keep moving with the petals. So here, we're going to just apply this modifier. So we'll hover over it and press Command A or Control A. And then we're actually going to subdivide it again. This petal looks a little ghostly because I still have X-ray view, so I'll press Option Z so we can see it a little better. And or Alt Z on Windows. Oops, jumping all around there. And then let's try subdividing this again. This time we'll turn it all the way up to 3. You can see we've got a nice little low res petal, but we might want to work it a little more. So, you know, flower petals have kind of a scoop to them. They kind of go down. You can see we have, because we applied that earlier modifier, we've got a more complex mesh, but still a pretty simple mesh, which is nice to work with. So I'm going to just select this point. I'm going to press O for the proportional transform. I'll press G for grab, Z for Z-axis, and I'll bring that down a little bit, and then I'll expand that circle so it doesn't quite go to the ends of the flower, and you'll see we can kind of create a spoon effect. And we don't want that side to go on the other, so I'm actually going to try, let's go into X-ray mode. Look at it from the side. We've got both those sides selected now. We'll hit G for grab, bring it down. Turn X-ray off. And got a little bit of a spoon effect, but I think we can do better. So I think I'm actually going to switch to edge mode. And I'll select this edge here. These edges here, do the same thing. G for grab, Z to bring it down. And now we've got like a nice sort of subtle, man, we could still use more actually. Now we've got like a little spoon to it. So I think that looks good for our flower petal. Looking from the side, I can see it's a little bit below its origin point. So in edit mode, I'll hit A to select all, turn off proportional editing, G for grab, Z for up, and bring it up a little bit. And now there's more things we can do, but it's kind of be it'll sort of be a matter of taste from here on out. For instance, I might actually have this out a little bit from the center, even if its origin is different. So we're going to use an array now to turn this into a flower. This will really be the most important part of this whole demo. The rest of it will kind of be variations on the same theme. So here I'll add an array. We have 2 petals in a row. And you can see we can change that count and go way up. There it is, perfect flower. Like it. So instead, I'm going to set this to, let's say, 16 petals to start. So there they are, 16 petals in a row. But now we're going to make a more sophisticated array. And the first thing we're going to want to do is add what's called an empty. So I'll hit Shift A. And here we have a few different shapes, empties. And as far as I know, it doesn't really matter what shape they are because they don't really have any consequence. So I'm going to make a sphere. So pretty much this sphere has no render potential. It's just an object that other things can move or be arranged in relation to. So here with this flower petal, we'll turn off relative offset. We'll turn on object offset. And we will select this empty. We can see that this already kind of did something weird. And to fix that, we're going to set the position of this petal to be absolute. So if I press N for the N menu, I can see the location of this petal is 0.2 some stuff 0. We want that to be fixed. So I'll hit Command A here and apply location. And you can see those numbers turn to 0 and it looks like we just have one petal. So the petals are still 16. They're just all in the same place and they're in array around this empty. So if I look straight from the top and I rotate the empty, we can see petals will rotate out with it. And the nice thing is we can also rotate the petals. So here I'll hit Tab for edit mode, select all, and I'll hit R for rotate, Y for the Y-axis, and I'll rotate that to the side so they kind of have that nice fan effect. Now, if we want to make a flower with lots and lots of petals, we can do that, and we can even get kind of like a cool double layer effect. And I think some flowers actually grow this way. So here on my flower petal, I'm going to set the array this time to 24 petals. You can see they're getting clumped up there. And now I'm going to do something else. I'm going to grab this empty and I'm going to hit G and Z. I'm going to bring it up just a little bit. And you can see if I bring it up a lot, it kind of turns into a spiral. And then I can also hit scale and size it down. You can see it creates this beautiful shell-like effect. But if we make it a little more subtle, and we kind of bring it all down together, we can get this effect of multiple overlapping petals. And we can even mess with this a little more. Maybe we can try 30 petals. Going into, when we want to change the array, we have to select the flower petals themselves. And if we want to mess with the empty, we select the empty. And there we have that nice kind of interesting flower. And to add a center to it, I'm just going to keep things simple. I'm going to add just a standard UV sphere. I'm going to press S for scale, Z for Z-axis, just squash it. Maybe make the whole thing a little bigger. G for grab, Z for up. Kind of put it up in there. We've got like a nice little center in our flower. Now, if we move the petals around, they're going to fall apart because they're still in an array around that modifier. So what we want to do is grab the petals, grab the center thing, and I forget what that's called, and grab the empty itself. And if we move them all together, they will move all together. If we rotate them all together, they'll rotate all together. So now to create a stem, we can hit Mesh, Curve, and just add a path. So we've got a little line down there. I'm going to hit R for rotate, Y for Y-axis, 90, just type the number 90. And now I'm going to hit S and Z. S and Z, it's kind of hard to see because it's in there. And then I'll hit G for grab, Z for Z-axis, and maybe in edit mode, I'll just tweak it a little more. And I'm going to let it go right through the ground. Okay, so here we've got the flower stem, and if we want to put a little bit of a bend or a wiggle into it, that's no problem. We can grab these points and move them around. And here you can see that line has a nice little curve to it. Now, to give this stem some body to it, we will go to the Curve tab. in this case, it's actually object data properties. Actually, never noticed that before. Oh, cool. So when you're on a mesh, you've got the mesh properties, curve, the curve properties. That makes total sense. I always thought it was the curve tab, but it's object data properties. So here we have a lot of different settings we can add to our curve. And what we want to go to is geometry and bevel and give it some bevel depth. And you can see that builds out kind of a cool stem effect. And we can press fill caps, and then the ends of it will be closed. So here you can see with fill caps without. Okay. So now that we've made our stem, we can make a basic leaf this time, just for fun. We'll start with a plane, because you can really do this with a plane or a cube. Hit tab for edit, G for grab. I'll do X for x-axis and just kind of move it out to here. I'm going to press backslash, so I'm only looking at this plane. I apologize, I'll press forward slash, so I'm only looking at this plane. And in edit, I will put a loop cut in it right there. And I'll select these 2 points and press S for scale. And they'll stretch out from each other. So you can see we got kind of a cool leafy shape already. If I want to add geometry to these points, I can select across. I'm not going to worry about that just yet. I might also grab just this point here and press Command-Shift-B for bevel, just to kind of flatten it out. Take this edge here. I'm going to hit GG, which slides this right along the point. And actually, I'm going to hit X and dissolve vertices. So we just have an even shape like this. And then maybe we'll try putting a subdivider on that first. Subdivision. So you can see that adds a little more of a shape to it. We can add more, but just to give us some more mesh to work with, we're actually just going to subdivide it by 1 and press Control A to apply it. And then we'll add the subdivider again. And this time set it to 2. So why do that? You know, instead of setting the subdivide to 3, I set it to 1 and applied it. And then I set it to 2 and didn't apply it. And the reason for that is I want, when I go to edit, to have some information on this mesh. I want some points, but not too many. So I'm going to select the middle point and the end, and I'm going to hit the letter J, which will cut between those. And now we can go ahead and start to set up this leaf. So I'm going to go ahead and select this line that goes straight through and press Shift-E and 1, which will give this leaf a nice point. And then still selecting those 2 edges, I'm going to hit G for grab and Z, bring it down. So our leaf has like a nice little fold. Also select this point in the middle and bring it down a little more. So our leaf has a less even fold, which I think looks nice. And I want the back of the leaf to be flat. So I think the way I'm actually going to do that is, there's different ways to do that. I'm going to select these 2 points and I'm going to hit J to connect through. I'm going to hit this point here and I'm going to hit X and choose dissolve vertices. And I don't like what happened there, so we're not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to select this point, and then I'm going to select the next one. I'm going to press M for merge and merge it last. That looks good. Then I'm going to select these points, and I think they're already even, but to make sure they are, I'm going to press S, X, and 0. And that did move it a little bit, so they're all lined up on the x-axis. And let's see how it looks if we flatten it out. S, Z, 0. I think it might have looked better without that. So maybe we'll do SZ and just pull it down a little bit. So that crease down the middle kind of disappears a bit. So we can see there is our leaf. And we can add another modifier to this, which will be solidify with some thickness. And that edge is really hard, but if we take the solidify modifier and drag it up above subdivide, you can see it kind of smooths everything out again. Though at the cost of the point, which I don't like. So maybe what I'll do actually is I'll leave it like this. This is a low poly flower. I kind of like having the leaf nice and sharp. And maybe I'll try to add a bevel modifier, which you can see has kind of cut that edge. And I'll set the segments to many. And now our leaf is kind of, it's not supposed to be realistic exactly, just feel like a leaf. I think that looks really good. So now back in edit mode, select A for select all, G for grab, X for X axis. We'll move it more or less to the point. It actually doesn't need to be exact. You know, we could give this leaf a stem. It just occurred to me. So we could bring that out a little bit. And how am I going to give this a stem? I think I will select both these edges and hit right click and choose subdivide. Now when I go into points, I've got more points to work with here. So I'll grab just these two and press scale to bring them towards each other. I'll select all three of these and press 2 for edge select. So I just selected these little edges here, E to extrude, X for the X axis, and I think that looks fine. Okay. So now we'll go ahead and put these on the plant. So I'll hit backslash. And we can kind of just do this the same way, actually. So we'll hit G for grab, X for X axis. If your stem is bending a lot, you might need to use a curve modifier, which I'll show you in a sec. But I find that can be a little wonky. So we've got all these modifiers here already. So let's minimize those. And then we'll add an array. We'll add a new empty. This time I'll add a cube so I can tell the difference easily. We'll change from relative to object offset. We'll give this maybe 6 or 7 leaves. I'll try with 6. And now I can take this cube and press G for grab, Z for the Z axis. Oh, I didn't set it yet. Whoops. So for the object offset, we will select the cube. And you can see the leaves moved a little bit, which means they're not in a perfect position. I can see that here. So I'll just press Command A and location. Now 0, 0, 0. That's what we want to see. I'll take this cube and press G for grab, Z for Z axis, and bring it up. Rotate it on the Z axis. Have those leaves go around. S for scale. Have those leaves get smaller as they go up the stem. G for grab again, Z for Z axis. You can see we get these leaves creeping nicely up the stem. What if we rotate it off axis? That also can add like a slightly more natural look to it. And I think that in terms of kind of the basic goal here, we're pretty much done. So this is just to have the basic skills to make a quick flower using arrays. One thing we can try that's a little more advanced, but it sometimes doesn't work, is we can try also adding a curve modifier. So I'll add a curve modifier. We'll choose this as the curve, and you can see it kind of looks crazy now, but if we grab these leaves, maybe if we grab the empty and get it into the right place, the leaves will actually follow the stems. So I'm going to hit Option R to reset the rotation. You can see how the leaves are following the stem. And I will rotate on the Z axis to rotate them around. But a problem with using the curve modifier in this order, as you can see, is it kind of distorts the leaves too. So I would be inclined to just use the basic array modifier for a low poly flower like this. So anyway, there you have it. Aside from colors, which you can quickly add, you can add some green petals and making it metallic for no reason. And select the petals in the stem and press Command L, link materials. Make the petals yellow, maybe. Make the interior kind of black. No reason I'm gonna make the petals metallic, because I think they just look a little better for this kind of low res effect, low poly effect. And yeah, there you have it, a very basic flower using arrays and empties.